All right, everybody, welcome to HRU 2019. My name is Phil Lichtenberger. This is the scanning forum at HRU. So for anybody take this before? Is this a repeat for some people? Perfect. For everybody else, this is brand new. We're going to cover a lot of topics in a very short period of time. If you need me to slow down, let me know. But we're going to probably take this to about 45 minutes, about 5 minutes at the end for questions. There's a lot of material in here. For those of you that missed anything, I am recording this, so we'll find it on YouTube. My YouTube channel is scannerschool.com/YouTube. So hopefully this makes it on there. And then if I get permission from the guys at HRU, you'll find this also as a podcast, the audio for today's presentation. So if you want to take this with you on the go and listen to it again, you'll find that at Scanner School. I also, at the very bottom here, there's a web link, scannerschool.com/HRU. And right now, if you put your email address in, it's going to automatically email you last year's presentation. I didn't have a chance to put this year's presentation in the feed. So, but if you go to that site, I'll embed the podcast and also the YouTube video replay of this. So, if I went a little bit too fast and you want to go back and listen to something, that should be made available for you.
Reason that's in .net instead of .com?
Because it's a mistake.
So it is .com.
It is .com, yes.
Okay.
All right. So we'll be covering conventional trunking, rebanding, the digital modes, and then also some useful equipment that you can use right here on Long Island. All right, so what is scanning? Scanning basically is the ability to cycle through many frequencies in a very short period of time, either via scan lists, banks, or that kind of thing. Again, it allows you to monitor several different agencies from a single radio, whereas if you had just a VHF radio, you'd be stuck listening to whatever's on the VHF side of the house. And of course, scanning is, at least in my point of view, it's pretty fun with all the stuff you can do with it. So why would we use a scanner instead of a two-way radio? Basically, scanners have a much faster scan rate, better memory management, which also includes the ability to lock things out and toggle things, into and out of scan lists. Much larger memories. The home patrol units have 4 gig out of the box, I think 8 gig possible, or 16 gig, something like that, something crazy like that. The unit scanners like the 996P2 has 25,000 memory locations in it, so that's quite a bit. Also the ability to monitor complex systems such as analog P25, DMR, and XDN trunking conventional all from a single radio. Instead of paying $6,000 for an APX series, commercial grade scanner is take a zero off that on the high end side. So, also some more complex functions such as RF scopes and digitals and logical channel functions and whatnot in the higher end scanners. So, what are some of the things that we can listen to on a scanner? So you can listen to obviously police, and depends where you are, fire, EMS, Office of Emergency Management, some transit, aviation, marine. Basically, if they transmit and they're not encrypted or they're not on some funky system, you will be able to monitor it with the scanner, or at least some sort of device that acts as a scanner, which we'll talk about really quick at the end here. So is owning a scanner legal? In the United States, yeah, it's legal to own a scanner. Local state laws and other things may limit you, like the Republic of New York is a little bit different. And for anybody who's curious, this is the New York State Vehicle Traffic Law. People read this one of two ways, and I'm not here to debate which way, one way or the other. I'm just here to point it out to you, and I like where it says that it must have a valid amateur radio operator's license, blah, 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 with a mobile transmitter in connection whereof a receiver for receiving a set of frequencies exclusively allocated for the Federal Communications Commission. People say, I have an amateur license, I can carry a scanner. That's not the way I read it. I read it as a transceiver that can go into the police band, which covered you back in the old Crystal days. But so that's a whole big topic of debate that has been going on for years. So long and short of it, don't do anything stupid with your scanner in the state of New York. Don't be committing a crime. Keep your nose clean, and if somebody bothers you, you answer all their questions. That's really all I have to say about it. Is it legal in New York? So we're all amateur radio operators in the room. We all understand basically conventional radio, point-to-point, simplex, duplex, repeaters. Okay. For real quick, for anybody who didn't want to answer, simplex example, this would be single frequency fire ground. Everybody transmits and receives on the same frequency, point-to-point communications, those kinds of things. Repeaters, basically, repeater on a high elevation allows you to have a bigger footprint. Example of that would be a dispatch frequency. And of course, you have a transmit side and a receive side, so you have frequency pairs that are in operation when it comes to repeaters. Now again, these all hold true for analog and digital. Everything so far right now, there's no line on the difference of it. And of course, if I can figure out how to go back a screen now. Duplex, which is kind of new to, or different for most of us in the amateur radio world, unless you're used to doing something like contesting, I guess, right, on HF. So duplex use two frequencies. Receive and transmit is flat, which was transmit and receive. So it allows you to, unit A is transmitting, but the receiver is also listening on the same transmit frequency, and they flip. The other guy transmits on the other guy's receive. In New York State Police operate on a duplex system, which is really why I want to slow up and point this one out. So if you're listening to New York State Police, you may find out that you might be able to hear, for example, here on Long Island, Troop L, really nice strong signal out of Farmingdale, and you may hear both sides of the transmission. But when they go ahead and they talk to a unit on the Parkway frequency, you're only going to hear maybe the dispatch. You're only going to hear Troop L. You may not hear the cars coming back. Actually, the dispatch, the Parkway frequency is simplex. That's a bad example. But there are duplex frequencies in use here. So when Troop L dispatcher transmits, the cars come back on a different frequency. When you set up your scan lists for New York State Police, my thought usually is to set them up in their own scan list. Set them up like on the unit and radios. You can set the hold time on a bank or a favorites list. Set the hold time for 3 or 4 seconds. This way, when it finishes going through the handful of New York State Police frequencies, it sits there and cycles through them all. So it gives you the opportunity to catch both sides of the transmission. If you didn't do that and you ran through maybe the dozen New York State frequencies and then went on to the rest of whatever your scanner was going to do, you'll miss whatever was happening for the state police.
That's called hold time?
It's called hold time, yes. Delay time is the amount of time that you stay on a frequency,
Yes.
but the hold time is the amount of time you stay in the bank or the favorites list. So with analog scanning, it's no different than we are used to with amateur radio with analog, right? You have PL tones, which is basically a CT-CSS subaudable tone. It allows basically filters on who you can hear and who can hear you kind of thing. There's also DPL, which is an upgraded version of it. It's a digital coded squelch, same principle as PL. Again, we're all pretty much familiar with PL and DPL in the room. Okay, so now we'll go on to digital scanning, which I know a lot of us many of you are getting into or starting to understand now because of the way things are changing here. Nassau County years ago went P25 with what they do. We all of us in Nassau County understand that the police are encrypted, so it's a headache, but there's still stuff to listen to on the P25 system. Nassau Medcom, fire marshals, hazmats, they're on the trunk system as well. Suffolk County is rolling over now to a P25 Phase 2 system. That system, I am going to assume, will be more populated. I guess maybe not full-time by the end of the year. I believe they're waiting for more transmitter site, but the Suffolk buses are on it. Southampton Village is on there. There are police talk groups on there already. So they are playing with it. They are going to make the move. So digital is where you're going. If you're going to buy a scanner today, I would really recommend buying something that is Phase 2 P25 capable. When you talk about digital, we need to understand that there's really two types of modulation schemes that we can use here. Not modulation, but the way the frequencies are broken up. You have FDMA, which is very easy for us to visualize coming from an analog world, coming from amateur radio. FDMA basically stands for frequency division, multiple access is what the acronym stands for. Short story with FDMA is if you're transmitting on a frequency, you own that frequency for the whole length of time that you're using it. So as an analog user or a digital user, there's really no difference in the real state that you're using. You've tied up 451.0 for the whole length of time that you're using it. Nobody else can use it while you're on it. Once you dekey, somebody else can use it. Frequency division basically means that if somebody else wants to key up, they have to be on a different frequency. So repeater pairs, input outputs, fireground, dispatch, tactical channel, dispatch, those kinds of things would be considered FDMA. FDMA kind of kicks in when it comes to digital because it allows you to split the signal in half and put two people on the same bandwidth, which is really no different than again, narrow banding today anyway in the analog world. The real thing that makes you think, though, is TDMA. TDMA, if anybody remembers AT&T cell service back, so I worked with AT&T for 18 years. When I started there 18 years ago, we had TDMA. So I'd say about 18 years ago, from 20 to 15 years ago, TDMA was the technology that AT&T used on their cell phones. And basically what it means is it's a time divisible multi-access, which means that you're using this frequency, but you're alternating your time slot with somebody else. So you're basically, over time, you're using it for half the time, somebody else is using it for half the amount of time. So really quick, what's happening is you have your user A is using it for like 30 milliseconds, and then user B uses it for 30 milliseconds, and user A uses it again for 30 milliseconds. And this happens on a really quick cycle, so that it doubles your capacity, basically. So TDMA is used on P25 and DMR, which we'll touch on now in another minute or two. So digital scanning, right? Everybody's kind of heard the acronym Project 25, APCO 25, P25. This was the big one for several years where everybody was going into it. The nice thing to know about P25 is that it was backwards compatible with the analog mode. So here's a basic flow chart of how P25 would be set up. You have your radio. You can go analog or digital. You can go conventional or trunked. You can go narrowband or wideband. You can go data, voice, encrypted, talk group, emergency group. On the other side, you have narrowband, wideband, CTCSS, DCS, or carrier squelch. So one radio was allowed to go back and forth. It was the standard for backwards compatibility. These days, if you need a federal grant, you have to go P25 phase 2. So P25 is still strong. It's still, I think it's the standard for security, public safety, basically. So when it comes to P25 scanning, obviously you need a scanner that's capable of doing P25. For conventional, it doesn't make a difference if it's phase 1 or phase 2. It just needs to do P25. Just like with analog, we have PL and DPL. You have NAC codes on P25. It's basically a 3-digit hexadecimal number. And again, it works basically the same way as a PL code, except in order to put it in CSQ, you would put in, I think, F7E, I think is what it, F7E is basically your CSQ setting when it comes to P25. Or you just don't program it in and the scanner automatically assumes open squelch. DMR. DMR we see a lot of on Long Island, a lot of in the tri-state. There's quite a bit of DMR in the amateur radio community now. So this one, we'll take a little bit of time talking about this one too. So DMR, if anybody's taken this before, this is a new slide. It's the European Telecommunications Standard Institute, I believe what it stands for, ETSI. It's a standard set up by them. And of course the benefits they say is the capability of increasing your licensing because now you have TDMA, so you've doubled your capacity. Longer battery life on the radios because again you're using it for half the amount of time. I don't know how much that comes into play, but there's a lot more coming out for DMR. Some of the scanners are able to receive DMR, especially the ones that do P25. With Unitins, usually a paid upgrade. When it comes to Whistler, it's included, but you're going to pay more for the radio out of the box. So it's kind of a trade-off as to whatever it needs. So again, DMR is strictly digital. There's no analog transmissions in DMR. 2 time slot TDMA, and the trick here is that it uses the AMBE plus 2 vocoder by DVSI. So does P25. So there's some similarities between that. And also when we talk about NXDN also uses the exact same vocoder. So with DMR, we have what are called color codes. And that's not a misspelling on the word color. That's European standard, right? So just like in PL or DPL for analog, you have color codes, values 1 through 15. And don't confuse a color code with a RAS key or a restricted access to system key. What a RAS key is, if you're on a commercial network and you have a radio that wants to transmit on the network, the RAS key is the authentication to get you to people to use that repeater. When it comes to scanning, there's no need for a RAS key because we're just receiving it. There's no authentication. There's nothing going on. People sometimes mistake RAS keys with encryption. It is not encryption. It's just an authentication method to get on the system. So again, since we don't have to worry about it, that value is ignored by scanner radios. But just for your information, it's 6 to 24 characters long, 26 alphabetical letters plus the 0 through 9.
Do those RAS keys give up on who's using it? Do they give them?
You have a radio ID or unit ID in the radio, so that would be the way of knowing. But if somebody clones...
Like some NAC codes, you say, oh, this is a known federal NAC code or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Those RAS keys, are they also?
We don't know what the RAS keys are. They're hashed out over the, on the layering. But as scanner radio, we don't really need to worry about RAS codes anyway. As far as I know, we can't figure out. And I'm not excited. It doesn't really, as a scanner user, doesn't matter.
Don't need it.
Yep.
Got it.
So NXDN. This one's a bit funny. NXDN stands for Next Generation Digital Narrowband. It's an ITU-R accepted mode of digital radio, created in 2003. And it's meant more for the business environment, oil truck deliveries, security type of things, commercial establishments. It can be configured as 6.25 kilohertz or 12.5 kilohertz, and it uses FDMA, whereas DMR and P25 use TDMA. NXDN uses FDMA. And there's several flavors too on NXDN. We have Kenwood has their own flavor called Next Edge. ICOM's got a flavor called IDAS. And then there's also the NXDN standard. When it comes to programming your scanner, you don't have to worry about it. The scanner handles whatever the protocol is. Also forgot to mention too, when it comes to DMR, there's 3 tiers. I must have muted that slide. I'm pretty sure it was in here. So DMR, there's 3 tiers. There's tier 1, which is very similar to our FRS or MERS frequencies here in the States. Basically, it's a for half a watt output, simplex mode only, and non-licensed, and it has a fixed antenna on it. So again, it's like those FRS radios that we're all kind of familiar with. Tier 2 allows you to have more higher output and also repeaters into the network. So it's made more for businesses who need a bigger footprint. And then tier 3 DMR is for trunking. We'll talk about trunking in just a minute here. How are we doing so far? Am I losing anybody? I know I'm going a little fast, but we're going to slow it when it gets in the trunking world. Does everybody here know how trunking works, or is this a mystery to a lot of people? Okay, perfect. So trunking in a very simple form is you have a pool of users that need to use a small number of resources. So what I like to say, for example, is we'll just take the rows in this classroom, right? There's 3 rows here. So we'll make, and plus the back row. We won't leave you guys out. There's 4 rows here. So we'll say each row is its own group, and then I am standing in front, so I am the guy coordinating everything here in the classroom. I would be the controller. The rows here would be the groups or the radio users in the network. And each one of you guys would be your own individual radio user. When somebody in the first row needs to key up and needs to talk to everybody else in the first row, he keys up the radio and he says, hey, controller, I need a voice channel. And I'll say, you guys go to channel 5. Everybody in this row goes to channel 5, listens to the conversation, and once the person dekeys the radio, you guys all come back to me to wait for directions. When somebody wants to respond, I'll say, okay, now you guys go to channel 10. And the whole row goes to channel 10. Stay that one conversation goes, and when that person dekeys, you'll come back to the control channel and wait for further directions. This happens over and over and over again. So while row 1 is maybe on channel 5, row 2 is on channel 7, row 3 is not doing anything, so they're waiting for me to tell them what to do next, and the back row might be on channel 1, doing what they're doing. And then when the first 2 rows dekey and they come back, they may swap frequencies. So you're always jumping around, using the resources pool that are available. So the point really of trunking is that when it comes to, like when you think, just think of repeaters in amateur radio, because it's the easiest thing to talk about since we're all here. Nobody else is going to use that frequency because it's coordinated, right? Nobody's going to use 14685 on Long Island because Limark's got that frequency coordinated for how many, decades now, right? But that's what I mean. That frequency is now tied up in New York. Think about it on the public safety side, where you have, the UHF band, and all these agencies and all these fire departments that have UHF. All of a sudden now, it's a battle for resources. People are now, like it's eBay, they're going on the FCC website and they're sniping licenses from other departments so that they can finally get a UHF channel. And they're not cheap to come by. You got to have them licensed and everything else. But you have departments that are hoarding now frequencies because they don't want to give them up because they have a value to them, and if they ever need to use it, they need a frequency. Now all of a sudden now they're owning these resources that may never be used. With trunking, you have a pool set of frequencies that you can use. And again, for an example, like we were saying here, each row can share the same frequencies. Now we have 4 rows here we're talking about. We may only have 2 frequencies in use. But because nobody's using them at the same time, you guys can keep reusing those 2 frequencies over and over again. Of course, when everybody wants to key up, that's when you have a problem. So like for Suffolk County, you have currently 22 channels. I believe 22 channels on the system. But you have police, you have fire, you have EMS, you have Medcom, you have the buses, you have state police, parks police. You have all the village police departments on there as well. And I believe OEM is on there. So you have a lot of things going on, but since not everybody's using it at the same time, it's better use of resources. Is really what trunking is all about. And that's the whole point of what trunking is. And hopefully I explained how it worked so you guys kind of understand a little bit how it works. Yep.
What happens in a disaster when everybody wants to talk to us?
That's when you start getting the old Nextel beeps. You know, when you get that, you push that button and you get that long tone. They will go into a fail-safe mode if, say, the controller goes down. So there is some redundancy in that, not redundancy, but a fail-safe type of thing in there. There are priorities on talk groups, so if somebody needed to get on, they could, I don't want to say they would preempt, but they would get moved up to the line. With DMR, there's queuing, so it will let you know that there's a channel available and you can talk now. I'm not sure if that's available in P25, but that is a possibility. But most networks are built out so that, you know, that shouldn't happen. But that is a possibility. And it's a possibility, too, that the controller can go toes up and all of a sudden AX has a bunch of small repeaters and everybody gets assigned to a channel. So,
Phil, is it as simple as you said 23 frequencies in Suffolk County? As soon as the 24th user, it's overloaded?
yeah,
Really?
group, not user.
I'm
Yeah. But, and I'll show you a video. I got a quick video on how that works. And if you want, we'll, so we can jump to that right now. To kind of help you out here. Well, I guess not. So I had a video on here that actually showed how a trunk system was working, because I use a software called Unitrunker, and it allows me to listen to the control channel, but it visualizes what's going on. So you can see all the voice channels, you can see the control channel, and you can see all the users jumping around. So it made a really nice video, but I can't play it here. So what I'll do is, we'll jump ahead real quick. I know it's hard for you guys to see, but this is just a snapshot of what that video was. And this little block up here, this red channel, that's the control channel. So he's the guy organizing everything. These little yellow channels here, these are alternate control channels. So they cycle through the control channels. And all these black frequencies here, these are all the voice channels. And you can see we have Suffolk County 2nd Precinct, Parks Police, 7th Precinct, County Transit, 6th Precinct, 1st Precinct, hospitals, and then County Transit on here. So you have a good number of users using it at one time. This was during the peak hours of the day, and you'll see, you would have seen them jumping all up and down the trunk system. Again, it is a possibility that it could overload, but you would think that the police have a higher priority than the buses, so that they would be able to get on if they need to.
Would they just not be able to use the system?
You would get a busy tone on the radio, or an access denied tone, yeah.
Would we be able to perceive that?
Yeah.
On the receiving end? Okay.
If you're using Unitrunker and you're watching the messages, you will see denied come across.
How do you get Unitrunk?
Go to unitrunker.com. That was part of the second course that didn't make it into here. So we have systems here in Long Island. We have an Etax system in Nassau County and also in the 5 boroughs. Motorola Type 2 in the city and Suffolk County until it goes extinct. P25 in Nassau, Suffolk, and the city. DMR in the whole tri-state area. LTR standard in the tri-state, and NXDN also in the tri-state area as well. So not so sure about what's up in your neck of the woods, but I'm sure most of these are also there as well.
And then is NXDN in Long Island at all?
Oh yeah, yep. Suffolk County Communications, I believe, is the big communication company that resells talk groups on their system. So
I'm not Suffolk County.
it's called Suffolk County Communication, but they have transmitters in Plainview and on Glen Oaks and all that stuff. It's just the company. Yeah, yep.
There's a little bit of everything up there. There's even MPT 1327.
Nice.
Useless to me, but it's not something major. It's some dinky agency that
Okay.
I'm not really concerned with, but I can't monitor anyway.
Okay. I think there is software out there that allow you to start monitoring that. So we're going to talk about Etax just really quick so you understand how it operates and how it works, because what goes on Etax transfers over to some of the other systems here. Etax is Enhanced Digital Access Communication System, and what we need to worry about here in Nassau County is just that Etax standard wide is what the Nassau County system uses, also what Port Authority is using. So it's a 9600 baud control channel, 25 kilohertz wide. It's a pretty wide channel. And you have to worry about the logical channel numbering. It's the number one thing to take away from looking at Etax. You need to know exactly how the frequencies are laid out in the system and put them in exactly the same way in your scanner. So you have to put, say in Nassau County, there's 17 frequencies. You got to put them in order. And with the old Radio Shack scanners, and with some, not so much now with the unit ones, but when you had to put them in, Radio Shack, you start with channel 0 in the bank. You couldn't put channel 0 as logical channel 1. You always had to put logical channel 1 in channel 1. If you are missing a logical channel or they're out of order, the scanner's not going to know where to go. Because in Etax, the controller says, guys, go to channel 5. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. Guys, go to channel 7. Go to channel 9. It's got to be pre-programmed in the radio, in the scanner, in order to go to where it's got to go. When it comes to programming your talk group, it's an AFS format, which basically means you have an agency, fleet, subfleet. So an example here is 06-141. In an ideal world, all of these same agency types would have the same agency 2 digits. Police 01, fire 02, EMS 03, so on and so forth. That's not how Nassau County is set up. It's kind of all over the place. I bring this up because in most scanners, if you just put 06 in, it will scan everything else on the FS, the last 3 digits. It will scan everything in there. So instead of putting in 999 subfleets, if that was the case, then you put in just the 06. Then we just talked about basically who's on what out here. And a lot of this is changing too. A lot of things are disappearing off the Nassau County system. Motorola. Motorola is the big one. So here in Long Island, we got Suffolk County. We've got DeWitt's got 2 systems, plus we got a couple of others. This is all getting phased out now, eventually. This is why we have rebanding. We'll talk about rebanding if we got time at the end. The deal, though, with Motorola is that it was supposed to be set in stone. So I never had to tell you what the frequency was because frequency 440 was always going to be channel 440. Channel 320 was always going to be channel 320. So when the controller says, hey guys, go to channel 551, everybody knows, oh yeah, it's hard-coded. That's going to be 856 dot whatever it is and go over to channel 561. Or whatever channel I gave you guys. And we'll talk about rebanding. We'll tie to that now. So basically what happens with rebanding is that you had Nextel, which was not supposed to be a phone company when they got licensed, and you have public safety. There was interference, so they kind of swapped spaces in the spectrum. In Suffolk County, they rolled over in 2010. In order to now take that pre-programmed data that Motorola was set in stone because it was never ever going to change, and all the radios knew it was never going to change, now changed. The only way to tell your scanner that it changed is to load it in as a reband system. Well, the old scanners don't allow you to put in a reband system because this was never going to change. So that's why you have a lot of radios now that are useless on the Suffolk County system. They'll work fine for everything else, as far as analog, conventional, Etax, and LTR, because again, we have in Etax we have the logical channel numbers that we need to program in. So when rebanding happens in an Etax system, we just change the frequencies. But when it comes to a Motorola system, that's not so simple. So you need to put in rebanding tables and all this other stuff. And software these days do a really good job of just auto-loading that stuff in there. So I would suggest saving yourself a little bit of a headache and look at programming with software. So in Motorola, we have multiple types of trunk systems. Right now, we only need to worry about really type 2. Type 1 is gone the way of the dodo, basically. And in fact, we'll even skip over it. So type 2 systems, they're ABCO 16 compliant. You can have up to 28 frequencies, over 4,000 talk groups. It uses a status bit, which we'll talk about in 1 second. And the talk groups are divisible by 16. And the reason why they are divisible by 16 is because we have what's called a status bit that's tied on to the end of each talk group, which is how the trunk system knows what's going on. So a typical normal talk group, say talk group 16, when there's nothing going on and nothing fancy happening, talk group 16 is talk group 16. But if there's an emergency, somebody pushes that orange button on the top of their radio and triggers that they have an emergency, the system will add a +2 to the end of the talk group. So now 16 becomes 18. The system knows that it's 16 because it's, all the talk groups here are divisible by 16. But if you program your radio, this is why I'm bringing this up here, there is a status bit ignore option. If you ignore the status bit, then it doesn't matter what the extra information is. You'll hear the talk group. But if you program in talk group 18 and you have it set to not ignore the status bit, you can really type in police emergency and have your radio beep and chirp that somebody has set up an emergency transmission on there. So again, you can have stuff like patch groups, encryption is enabled, and all that stuff. And again, for the end user in our boat, just make sure when you program this in, usually by default, the status bits are set to ignore in the scanner programming. And real quick, what we have here in New York is Suffolk County, New York City, DeWitt, Westchester, and again, most of these are moving over to something new anyway. LTR trunking we'll skip over because we're running short on time. The digital version of Etax is Pro Voice. There's nothing Pro Voice on Long Island, so don't go ahead and purchase a upgrade for Uniden for Pro Voice. It's not needed here. Pro Voice is basically a digital talk group on the existing analog system. There is nothing that will support MACOM Open Sky, so we don't talk about that one either. I'm just jumping over a couple of the technical stuff and getting into the useful stuff right now because we're after 9:30 already. So phase 1, phase 2 P25. There's also X2 TDMA, which we won't talk about because nobody's using X2 TDMA. Phase 1 basically is FDMA. Remember we talked about FDMA and TDMA earlier? So phase 1 is FDMA, one conversation per frequency. Works just the way Motorola trunking did, Etax trunking, and everything else. One user, one voice channel. When that user was done, it went back in the pool and was available again. Phase 2 brings up TDMA. So now all these voice channels are now split in half. And that's why some of the older radios, they don't support phase 2, they don't support phase 1. The horsepower wasn't there to be able to have that happen. But that's why else now phase 2 is important. And most stuff out there that's being built will support phase 2, like Nassau County system will support phase 2, even though there's only phase 1 talk groups on the system. Suffolk County system is going full out phase 2 when they're launching it. So that's what I'm hearing. So you'll at least need a phase 2 scanner. And most of the P25 scanners that are available out there, except the 2 by Whistler, are phase 2 already. So a phase 2 scanner will get you in the door about $350. Again, P25 uses that AMBE plus vocoder, which you're paying for the licensing, basically, is why it also costs a bit more money.
It's no longer the new one, but Home Control 1 only does phase 1.
Correct. Yeah.
In case someone buys that, because I have a few of those and I have one Home Control 2.
I bought the 1 and skipped the 2. But I went with everything else, so. So P25 single channel trunking is basically a bunch of people using different torque groups on a single conventional frequency. That's all you have to worry about. They're using a torque group the same way you would use a NAC code or a PL code on analog world. So P25 trunking kind of operates the exact same way as far as what we need to worry about when it comes to your scanner. Same as a regular, just thinking about it, right? There's nothing really different about it except it's a digital mode. You still only need the control channels to be put in there. You don't need to worry about rebanding because everything's now given to you over the air. You can break down the system into zones, so wherever there's radios registered to, that's the only transmitters that are going to be used. Like in Nassau County, there is a north zone and a south zone, or they call it Oyster Bay in primary. So if you have EMS units all over the county, the Medcom channels are on both the Oyster Bay and the primary simulcast. Town of Oyster Bay North, or town of something north, is also on the trunk system, but they're only on the North Shore. So their torque group only happens on the Oyster Bay simulcast. It doesn't get repeated on the primary. So again, it's a better resource, better use of resources. So the trick here, though, is when you program your scanner, you can program in the north zone and the south zone, and then if you're scratching your head trying to figure out why you can't hear what you think you can hear, because they may be transmitting on a set of sites that you're not scanning. You know you're scanning the entire system, you're not monitoring that site, so you're not going to hear that transmission come up. So here in Long Island area, we got Nassau County, town of Babylon. New York City's got a system on 700. Metro 25 is the state system out of the city. And Suffolk County P25, which I would assume is going to be getting busy this year. DMR Tier 3. This is the DMR trunking. There's 3 flavors to worry about here. As far as scanner users go, we really don't care because the scanner takes care of what it is for us. But when it comes to listening to it, as far as listening to the control channels, you're going to hear a couple different things that are different. So the 3 flavors are Capacity Plus, Connect Plus, and Capacity Max. You also need to make sure you have your logical channel numbers in order, again, just as you would have in, which we didn't talk about, LTR and Etax. Usually they're in pairs, so logical channel numbers 1 and 2 are the same. So figure TDMA, right? Time slot 1 or time slot 0 is channel 1. The second time slot is channel 2, logical channel 2. So it'll be the same frequency for 1 and 2, same frequency for 3 and 4. Capacity Plus is single site or link sites, and it uses a rest channel instead of a control channel. So basically what happens if we use the same example we used before and how trunking works, I'd be the control channel, but I'm just sitting here silent. I'm not doing anything. Every once in a while I'll say, hey, I'm still here. And you guys go, okay, I'm in range. So that's how the rest channel works. If row 1 decides they need to talk, I tell everybody else, hey guys, go to the next rest channel. You claim this frequency, you can use it. A little bit backwards than what we're used to. Once you guys are finished talking, you go and join the other people on the rest channel they just moved over to. So it's a little strange to see how this works compared to all the other trunk systems that are out there. And again, if you're using the first channel and everybody's on rest channel 2 and somebody needs to use it and everybody gets pushed to rest channel number 3 so that the people who want to use channel 2 can use channel 2. And you work your way all the way up to the top channel and then the rest channel goes back down to the beginning. DMR Connect Plus, you have a dedicated voice channel, a dedicated control channel, so it's more of what we're used to. You'll hear the control channel keyed up basically all the time. When users need a voice channel, they get sent to a voice channel. Again, you need to know your logical channel numbers, just like you did with Capacity Plus, except now Connect Plus has been replaced by Capacity Max, which is now fully compliant with Tier 3 standards, where the other 2 weren't. Again, dedicated control channel. You can add a secondary control channel if you need more capacity on the system. There's nothing out here right now using Capacity Max. We just have Capacity Plus and Connect Plus. If you guys program in the one voice network, that's like the big system. It's like a whole tri-state type of setup with several small radio shops basically came together and made one large network. So when I say Suffolk County Communications, I believe they have not only an XDN network, but they may have a Connect Plus network. But again, it's a lot of the small companies came together. What you'll find on Connect Plus is a whole lot of stuff. Towing companies, cement truck companies, security companies, taxi companies. You may find some police on there. You may find some ambulance companies on there. So it's a whole lot of funny stuff. But again, you're only going to hear what's keying up on your local site. So if you're listening to the Plainview site, you only hear the users that are registered on the Plainview site. You're not going to hear the people who are registered in Syracuse. You know, that's how it works. NXDN, there's two flavors of trunking when it comes to NXDN, Type C and Type D. So Type C is a multi-site dedicated control channel. It could be 6.25 kilohertz to 12 kilohertz. Type D, there's no control channel. Again, it works a lot like LTR. A lot of the businesses would roll over into NXDN Type D if they have a DMR setup. The nice thing about NXDN, which I didn't touch on, is it has a very easy, from at least the deployable state, it allowed you to use the older equipment so you could quickly get into NXDN. So a lot of the systems that are out there have migrated from LTR to NXDN. Some of them have gone from LTR to DMR. And we talked about rebanding already, and then I went through this in record time. So which is really nice because now we have some time at the end for questions, which I normally don't have. As far as radios go for the area, the BC125AT is a nice, no trunking, analog-only radio made by Uniden. Nice small footprint, about $89. Alpha tags, PL code, DPL. Non-digital trunking, which will do the Motorola systems and Etax and LTR. I would recommend the BCT15X. When it comes to digital, everything here I recommend will do phase 2 P25, BCD325P2, BCD996P2, Home Patrol 2, the BCD436HP, BCD536HP, and the SDS100. SDS100 is a $650 radio. It's Uniden's brand new unit. It's supposed to work really well in simulcast environments. Yep. Except we don't really have simulcast out on the island to worry about. A lot of other areas do have simulcast, and what simulcast basically means, if you weren't here earlier, before we started the presentation, you have multiple sites transmitting the exact same thing at the exact same time, but it comes to you a little bit out of phase. Remember when we had analog TV, we had ghosting that would show up, multipath type of issues. Scanners don't do a good job of putting that information back together again. The SDS has a whole different algorithm. It's called IceQ scanning on how they do that, and we won't even go into that. It's a whole other 50-minute class. When it comes to Whistler, if you like the way that your old Radio Shack Pro units work, you want a Whistler radio. Whistler, GRE made radios for Radio Shack. GRE got acquired by Whistler. Whistler then made radios again for Radio Shack, and then they make their own radios now. So the WS1010 is an entry-level line. They don't make any non-digital scanners, but you have to watch out for Whistler because the first two here, the WS1040 and the 1065, don't do P25 phase 2. They don't do P25 phase 1. And then the TRX1 and TRX2, they're the right now the current top-of-line ones until the new ones come out, which we hear are going to be soon. The TRX1 and 2 include NXDN and DMR, included with the radio. Everything here, when it comes to Uniden, it's a paid upgrade for DMR, and not all of them support NXDN.
The new Whistler that's coming out is going to have Bluetooth.
It's vaporware right now. We haven't seen anything. We haven't even seen a picture from Whistler. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be called the TRX 100 and 200. At least that's what the leaked name is on it. But with anything else, you know, Uniden says, hey, we got this radio. And Whistler had to go, well, I got one too. But, you know, just to keep things going in the...
Is the
sorry.
Home Patrol 2, the Home Patrol 2, is that, what interests me is driving down 95 and have it automatically finding systems as I'm going down. My friend used a Home Patrol, loved it, put a GPS antenna on the roof, also did it via train. Do those BCD 436, do they have that same capability?
Yes. So they do use the Home Patrol database, which is what the HP at the end of it means. Basically, you use software. It's called Sentinel. Though the Home Patrol 2 and 1 share Sentinel, and then the 436, 536, and SDS 100, and the new 200, they have a different version of Sentinel. But it's the same thing. It takes the radio reference database. So for free, you can just pull the radio reference database. Yep. And you can program your radio that way. It does have the geotagging in it, either with rectangles or circles. So as you're driving, it will turn the lists off and on for you if you have a GPS hooked up to it. So the Whistler TRX 1 and 2 also, I believe they do. I know they do the radio reference database import. I'm pretty sure they do GPS, but not 100% sure. I haven't played around with that at all.
The Home Patrol 2 that does have DMR upgrade available. I was told by Uniden, unless the guy didn't know what he was talking about, said Home Patrol 2, you can't.
Then he probably, yeah, I don't, yeah.
And then, is the SDS 200 a base model instead of like handheld?
Yep. Anybody else have any other questions?
Great job, Phil.
Thank you. Ed?
Thank you.
One of your slides, on the right side was a trunk system, and under it, it said NYPD simulcast. That one. The Metro 25.
Yeah, they had Citywide 3, I think, is tied into that group. It's tied into there. So, but the footprint on that one really isn't the greatest.
Yeah, I
So,
had trouble
yeah.
picking it up.
Yep. So, but there's more stuff popping up. So what's really cool is, do you guys, you have any questions? Because we'll talk about SDR real quick if you want, which is really cool. Okay. So there's no slides on it because I wasn't really prepped to talk about it. But if you guys are interested, SDR you can get into for $30. You can buy these new evac USB dongles, and they plug into your laptop, and they're basically a receiver. They're modified to be a receiver. And the things you could do with it are pretty amazing. So you can tie it into a piece of software like Unitrunker and see what's going on these trunk systems we talked about. You can get a visual of all the overhead. You can tie it into software called DSD Plus, which allows you to monitor NXDN, P25, DMR. If you had a DV dongle, you could do D-Star, I believe, with it as well. And again, for $30, you got a receiver that will, and free software allows you to do all this stuff. So if you don't want to spend the $350 to get a digital radio, you could, if you had enough time invested in it, you could go out and you could buy two USB dongles or SDRs for $30 a piece. Use the free software to one to stay in the control channel and one to act as your voice receiver. It uses your computer speakers to take the audio and make it into something we can listen to. And it's a good way of playing around and kind of understanding what's going on, because you can see what's going on as you're listening to it, and you kind of get a better understanding. Which is why I really wish we had that video going up, but we don't do that. And speaking of video, I will be repurposing this as a podcast. So if I went too fast, you want a refresher, my website is scannerschool.com. The website at the bottom is incorrect. It's scannerschool.com, not scannerschool.net. If you go to scannerschool.com/HRU, I'll email you the slides right now instead of for last year's slides. So by the time I get home, I'll do this year's slides. And when I do the podcast editing, then this audio that I'm doing today will be available for you guys to re-listen to. So
You can use those dongles also to do Mode S also for aircraft.
I do. I use that too. Yeah, I know, Ed, you do that as well. I've seen you on the server. So I do talk about that in the podcast as well and set that up. And I had
Plane plotter, what do you use?
right now I just use the built-in what's it called? Flight Aware. The Flight Aware server. Yeah.
Check out plane plotter.
I'm on their mailing list. I just haven't had time to play around with it at all.
Phil, quick
So-
question.
yes.
To that. If you're using like FlightAware or something, do you have to upload to their website, or I mean, can you just use that on a Raspberry Pi and view what's going on?
I think for them you have to, if you're going to use their interface, you have to upload it. But with Plane Plotter, you can do it locally.
Just with Plane Plotter, you don't have to.
We had to have the receiver,
Right.
and then you can then do it. But Plane Plotter is commercial software. So
But there's a monthly fee for Plane Plotter, right?
I'm not sure if it's monthly fee or if it's a flat-out license.
And is that with a Pi or is that with your laptop?
You would need. Good question. I'm not exactly sure. Yep.
Because there is a Raspberry Pi forum going on right after this.
Okay. Yeah, but I do use my Raspberry Pi to do the FlightAware, and I can log into it. I get a nice little web page, and in fact, I was doing it with the air show, just watching all the planes stage off the beach, and then you'd see them come in and do their exercises and.
You were using
fly back.
FlightAware for that?
Yes. Yep.
But you upload the FlightAware.
I did at the time. I've taken it offline since then, but yes. Yep.
I'm going to drag it back to digital.
Sure.
Why so many different systems? P25 seems to be forward and backward compatible, trunking, non-trunking, all that stuff, reprogrammable. Why so many additional modes out there?
Why are there so many car manufacturers out there? You know, I mean, it's
Well,
just,
I mean,
you know, it's.
You know, you're talking about people trying to adopt, you know,
Right.
a lot of money for one county to dive into a P25, and all of a sudden it's the.
Well, by the time P25 actually came to the commercial or the public safety environment, it was already an old technology. It was so they already had a security cracked once, so they went to AES 256. But again, it's different types of things for different users. So NXDN was made more for a commercial environment. DMR, again, was also made for commercial, but a lot of people started using it for public safety. NXDN was easy for system admins to integrate because it plugged into their existing infrastructure, where P25 was a whole system from the ground up. It required back-end, it required IT knowledge, it required a whole lot of, it was a whole brand new rebuild for everything. So,
In the ham radio, we came to decide. We started with D-Star, then you have Fusion, and now you're
Yep.
doing DMR.
yep, exactly.
God knows what else.
But the same deal with the analog trunking. There was LTR, Etax, Motorola. So there's other flavors out there for everything. So, but all right, guys. All right. Thank you very much. I'll hang around for a little bit to answer some questions.